Between the 23rd and 26th of May 2019, I was a guest of the Austrian Wine Marketing Board at their Wine Summit program, which takes place every 2 years. What follows in this series is in-depth coverage of the journey along the Danube stream of the summit. This features a mixture of presentations from members of the Austrian Wine Marketing Board and a combination of presentations and tours of participating wineries. If you've ever wanted to increase your knowledge of Austrian wine, this is the place to be. And do be sure to subscribe to the podcast at interpretingwine.com/listen so that you're alerted when new episodes go live. Today's episode of the Austrian Wine Summit series features a winery tour of Stift Klosterneuburg with Wolfgang Hamm, winery director. Starting at ground level, we literally move through the different systems that they have at the monastery for making wine. Wolfgang sharing interesting facts around the construction of the building and its long history as we go. We then finish with a short tasting of a couple of examples of their wine, information which I've left in the description below. Enjoy!
My name is Wolfgang. I'm the director of Stift Klosterneuburg Winery, and it's a great pleasure to have you here today. Stift Klosterneuburg is a monastery, which you can see, our abbey church back here, and inside of the monastery is where 50 monks from the religious order Augustine Canons live and work. And further down is where our winery is located. And the monastery, as well as the winery, were founded in 1114 by Saint Leopold. And since this very day, since the beginning of the foundation of the monastery, viticulture has been an integral part of the monastery. So we have been making wine ever since, so for more than 905 years up to now, which makes us the oldest winery of Austria and one of the oldest wineries in the whole world, actually. Wow. You came down the Danube River, and the Danube is actually just flowing by behind these trees. So Klosterneuburg is the next town upstream the river Danube from Vienna. So we are already in Lower Austria, so about 10 kilometers upstream the river Danube. And on this hill sits the monastery. And our vineyards actually are, of course, also partly located directly here in town. This is where, right next to the Danube, we grow Grüner Veltliner, Riesling, and a bit of Sauvignon. But we also have vineyards in Vienna, which is just very nearby, where we cultivate 25 hectares and specialize in the typical Viennese grape varieties of Gemischter Satz, which you have come across and will be coming across tomorrow evening, and plus all the Pinot varieties on these limestone-rich soils of Nussberg, Kahlenberg and Leopoldsberg. But we also have vineyards further down south, so south of Vienna in the Thermen region, where in Gumbolzkirchen, where we grow Zierfandler and Rotgipfler, and further down south in Tappendorf, where we grow St. Laurent, mainly St. Laurent, Pinot Noir, and the other red wine varieties. And talking, for example, of St. Laurent, the indigenous Austrian red wine grape St. Laurent was first brought to Austria by monks of our monastery and was first planted in our winery and spread later on from our winery to the other wine growing regions and also to our neighboring countries afterwards, but has its origin here, and we are still today the largest St. Laurent grower in Austria and the home of the individual indigenous St. Laurent clones, the original ones. Also, if you think of the first wine growing school in the world, it was small Austria that realized that it needs a formal education for wine growers and future wine growers who are doing their first tractor rides. And actually it was the monastery of Klosterneuburg that founded the first viticultural college of the world. We hosted the school in the other courtyard back there for the first decades. Today it's a federal institution. They are our neighbors and we still work together very well. This is just two examples of which developments started here that influenced Austrian viticulture in general and shows also the historic importance of our estate for the Austrian wine industry in general. But let's see where the wines are actually being made. Whenever you have questions, you can interrupt me anytime. Yeah, Aaron already realized before that there is a big abbey church back there and that there is a smaller church right here. This actually, today it's a male convent, but up until the Middle Ages there was also a women's convent here in Klosterneuburg, and this used to be the church of the women's convent. But the church was officially desecrated in 1722, and since then serves other holy purposes. This is our press house now. This is where we crush our grapes. Yeah, here we are in our press house. More detail to say, in one of our two press houses. This is mainly our white wine press house. Our red wine press house is next door. We decided to separate the red grapes from the white grapes to have also during the harvest two teams, one taking care of the white wines and one taking care of the red grapes. Harvest season is always quite a busy season, and so we are taking out some of the stress by separating the teams and having everyone concentrate on what he or she is doing at the moment. And yeah, the church was simply converted in a press house. They built in these Baroque vaults into the Gothic church. And the grapes come in the same door where we just came in. We harvest in little boxes, and you see all the equipment. It's everything is meant to be as simple as possible. We want to be able to combine the way we treat our grapes and to combine the machines within minutes to be as flexible as possible. And treat each and every single vineyard and each and every grape variety the way we think it's perfect for this very batch, and not having one fixed line where everything is treated more or less the same way. So we can either do whole cluster pressing by going directly in our one of our three pneumatic tank presses. We can go over the stemmer and separate the berries from the stems. We have an automatic sorting machine where we can sort the grapes. We also have, of course, manual table de triage, selection tables, and then the grapes go on this band up into the presses where we can decide to squeeze the berries before they go into the press to go for skin contact and longer maceration times. So everything can be decided on spot. And the second important thing about it is, as soon as we have a technological innovation, as there is an advance. I can take out the old machine, drive it out on the wheels by the door and bring in something new. And I'm not restricted and limited by having a fixed installation, a fixed line, which keeps me unflexible and which only makes it possible to reinvest in cycles of, 10 years. So I'm always able to adapt and go for maximum quality in every step we do. I say it mainly white wines. Only these vessels behind me are reserved for our top red wines, which ferment in the big wooden fermenters here. These fermenters, as well as the big wood barrels, which you will be seeing one level further down, are all made from our own wood. So this is oak from our own forest, right here in town, part of the Vienna forest.
So what's the difference between the wood from your region and the French ones?
As you know, the influence of wood in general is very big on the wine. And it's even difficult to generalize on, let's say, French wood or Austrian wood, because even there, where exactly the trees grew makes the biggest difference on the aroma development of the wood. And in our case, we only take oak trees that grow on the northern slopes of the Vienna forest in closed canopy forests. They are growing on pure limestone rock. So they are growing very, very slowly, having very dense, compact lignin bodies. They are not exposed, the stems, to direct sunshine, because on this part the wood grows bigger. So you want them in closed forests. And then the time of cutting the trees, of drying the logs, is also extremely important, which we do at the perfect time, which is at new moon in January, where the sap is all down in the root system, and where the physiological activity of the tree is at its lowest point. And then the logs just first dry outside in the forest before they're taken out to the drying spots of our cooper.
How many years do you dry them?
Depending, a minimum of 3 years. Here we are in our fermentation cellar. In our winery, we actually have 5 levels in the cellar, so we can really make use of the gravity in the production of our wines. And after pressing, the grape juice runs down here either into the stainless steel tanks, or for the top whites in either barrels of oak, or in some cases also of acacia, for example, like these barrels back here. As I mentioned, all these barrels are made from our own trees. And here is where our white wines ferment. The red wines ferment over in the red wine press house and then flow down into the cellar and go either into one of the large oak barrels or then further down into one of the barriques.
Usually, what's the size of the barrique?
Usually,
600
no, usually we use the classical 225 liters. We also have some 300 liters. We also had some 400 liters, which we skipped again, and we have also some 500 liter tonneaus, which we mainly use for the white reserves. Yeah, here we are now in the youngest part of the cellar. This is just 300 years old. And now we are directly below the monastery. Here in front you have two barrels with Sisi and Emperor Franz Josef. They were filled with wine from our estate at the World Exhibition in Vienna in 1873, where wine from our estate was poured. And in remembrance of this occasion, and the barrels have been in use for 100 years, but at some time we were not able to use them anymore, and so now they're hanging on the wall for decoration right now. So they're not in use anymore. But yeah, let's head further down. This is just the beginning. Yeah, here we are in our cellar road. This road was actually not built for the winery, but the road was built as a secret exit for the emperor, so that he could go directly from the inner courtyard, unseen, towards Vienna. And we are very lucky to have this road nowadays, because we can bring in bigger machinery and don't have to carry everything down the spiral staircase, which would be a bit of a pain in the ass. So it's easier like that.
Thank you, Emperor.
So guys, the good news, this is it. No more stairs down for you. The bad news, a few stairs up for you. So now we are on the deepest point of the cellar. Now we are 36 meters
36
underground.
meters.
Yes. And one of the unique things about this cellar is that it's not a cellar that was actually dug into the ground, but when you came to Klosterneuburg, you saw the monastery sitting on top of a hill. And the monastery and the cellars were actually built right next to this hill from the bottom, from the Danube level up. So actually these walls are touching the earth. So the escarpment of the hill, and these walls are actually outer walls. And the architect that built this cellar was a real genius. It was an Italian who was commissioned with that because he was a specialist in fortress building. And at that time, the river Danube was flowing where today the road and the railroad is. The riverbed was removed about 200 meters, about 130 years ago, to give way for the railroad and the road. But at that time, you needed strong walls against the floods of the river. And what he did is, he first built 6-meter thick outer walls. Then he left a space of about 1 meter and built 3-meter thick inner walls. And every few meters, he made a connection between the interior of the cellar and this corridor in between these walls, and constructed a natural ventilation system which works after the simple physical principle that warm air rises and cold air sinks down. And for this reason, we have down here clear, fresh air, no cellar stench, and stable temperature throughout the whole year, because the system regulates itself.
Genius.
And Nick?
What year was it constructed?
That was constructed in 1730.
1730.
And yeah, if you imagine that this system has been working now for almost 300 years without maintenance and without energy, you can imagine the geniality of it. And actually, that was not the only place that was built like that. And a couple of years ago, when we built a storeroom for our bottled wines, we told the engineers and the construction companies, please use the same system for our storeroom. And all the engineers said, yeah, well, we can build 2 walls, no problem. We can also make holes into these walls, but if this ventilation system is going to work, we have no clue. And actually, we don't take guarantee. And in reality, we had to install classic pipes and the classic air conditioning system for our warehouse, because the knowledge about constructing such a ventilation system has simply been lost. There have been scientists here and with data loggers measuring air currents and temperature fluctuations and this and that, and we have really thick books about our ventilation system, but 100% why and how these air streams are being generated, we still don't know until this very day.
So it's totally passive?
Yes, totally passive. There's no electricity in any way involved.
Did they hesitate to make 18-meter walls in the new storage room?
Well, that was probably not the issue, because the River Danube is not here anymore, so we don't need that anymore. But of course, this huge storing body, which has a very low temperature flexibility, is of course one reason for this stable temperature. This is, of course, if you do return on investment calculations nowadays, where the ROI has to be reached in 10 years, a thing like that would not be feasible. If you're thinking long term, then it makes a whole lot of sense. And this is where we age our top wines. You see? Yes, you see our main grape variety, the St. Laurent grape, which is so very dear to our hearts. And also back here you see, for example, barrels, also the Barriques, which are made from our own wood from the Weidling Valley, which is just the next valley, the side valley of the River Danube where the oak grows. We use about 1/3 our own oak and 2/3 French oak. And as you see, we're working together with several coopers, because as with the way we treat each and every parcel of vineyard, we also believe a lot in variety. And for this reason, we are not having one cooperage, but several, because each and every cooperage has its style. And so by blending the same wine from different barrels, from different cooperages, you again get added complexity in the wine. And this is what we strongly believe in. Also, when you went through our whole winery, although we are one of the largest wineries in Austria, you didn't see a single huge tank. We also believe of vinifying each and every vineyard individually, and after that, then let's say when we make our classic Grüner Veltliner, blending these different vineyards into one classic Grüner Veltliner, because you get the different aromas from the different vineyards, plus the different fermentations in different tanks. And you also in a basic wine, you get more complexity than when you just have one fermentation in one bigger tank. It's also good wine, but not as, yeah. Yeah, then I'd suggest let's move up again. Yeah, here we are in the Sala Terrina. This is the visitors' entrance to the monastery. The monastery is open for visitors every day, and also the winery and our cellars can be visited. So there is a daily cellar tour starting here, and then on weekends there are cellar tours where you can just take part every time, anytime, without prior notice. And then, of course, for groups, also cellar tours are available anytime. And we have audio guides in 14 languages. So the probability that there is also a language of your home countries is very high. So people can really enjoy the history, exploring the history of our winery in their mother tongue. Are you guys ready for the tasting? Then let's go upstairs. Whenever you need more information, pictures, or anything, you can just go to our website where you can find our press kit for downloads, and also photos of winery, monastery building, vineyards, whatever you need. And if there is something you need which is not there, just drop me a line and I'll be happy to provide it to you. Let's go upstairs. The Imperial Staircase. In summer, we have inside the courtyard an opera festival, which is very nice. We have prepared 2 typical wines of our region. With the first one is a classic Riesling, directly from Klosterneuburg, growing in a side valley of the river Danube on sandstone.
What is next?
The second wine is Grüner Veltliner. What a question from a single vineyard, also here in town, a southeasterly facing slope overlooking the river Danube, loess and loam soil on top of weathered conglomerate soil. Both are vintage 18. The first 2 wines were the ones which you also have in your booklet. We also have prepared 5 other wines to give you, these were the 2 typical wines of the region, to give you an impression of our other wines from our other regions. We have our sparkling wine here, our top Pinot Blanc from Vienna, so also tasting wine from Vienna. Having talked about Gumpoldskirchen, our top Rotgipfler from the Thermen region, our top St. Laurent, and a blend, our top red wine blend.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang, for taking us around Stift Klosterneuburg. So interesting to hear how you're combining modern technology with the history of the buildings that you find yourself in. A tour is very much recommended if you're ever in the area, so do be sure to check out their website for pictures and the press kit, as Wolfgang mentioned. This being the 9th and final part of this Austrian Wine Summit series, it's only left for me to say a huge thank you to everybody who's appeared on these episodes, and to everybody at the Austrian Wine Marketing Board for organising such a seamless experience for me and all of the other international visitors. These episodes really tell the story of the Down the Danube stream of the Austrian Wine Summit, and I hope that by sharing this will get the information out to many more people who are not able to visit Austria. Of course, if you've enjoyed this series, then do be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And if you can think of anybody who'd like to hear this, then do please direct them to interpretingwine.com/listen. And if you're not already, then do be sure to follow along with me on social media, where I'm at Interpreting Wine on Instagram and Facebook, at Wine Podcast on Twitter, and email hello@interpretingwine.com. See you next time.